welcome to ChewintheCud Season 2, Episode 5. My name's Andrew Jones, and with me as usual...
It's Neil Greggor. It's lovely to be back.
How are you, Neil?
Yeah, good, thanks, mate, and you?
Yeah, well, we're in the middle of, Storm Kieran, as we call this today. So I'm sure everybody else is getting just as wet as, well, we're not, because we're in the house. We're in the house recording this, so what have we got to complain about? Exactly. So it's now November, and we're here as usual for our monthly podcast. And this month we thought we'd talk about it's good to talk and I guess talk about mental health a little bit. It's been on our radar probably ever since we started the podcast.
Yeah.
But it probably came about this month simply because we've got a couple of guests with us today. The first is Andy Dodd, who's a farm consultant from the Farm Consultancy Group. So hello, Andy.
Hello, Andrew.
And how are you?
Yeah, very well, thank you. Thanks for inviting me on.
No worries. And then also with us today, we've also invited Lynda and Andy Eadon from Len's Lights. So good afternoon to you both. How are you?
Hello, fine, thank you.
Very well, thank you.
Good. Thank you for joining us. What drove me to this month was Andy Dodd had published an article on the FCG website. It's good to talk. And then we thought we'd bring the likes of Lynda and Andy in on the conversation as well. Before we start, like usual, Andy, how did you get to where you are today?
That's a good question. So I'm a non-farming background from Yorkshire. Got into Young Farmers, went to Harper Adams, milked some cows, managed a couple of dairy units, moved on to AHDB, where got involved with genetics and young stock, and then moved into consultancy back in 2018. And I'm now a director in one of the FCG offices based in Chippenham.
So, that's a very quick resume. And Lynda and Andy, what's your background and how did you get to be where you are today? I mean, are you from a farming background yourselves, or...?
Yes, we've got Andy's family. We've got a small farm, just sheep farming. And like a lot of small farmers, we both do other full-time jobs as well. So Andrew's for many, many years has been livestock ultrasound scanner, travelling around. And during the year, which I used to do as well with him, but during the year of foot and mouth when neither of us could work. I started to take my hobby more seriously, which was upholstery and soft furnishings, and I now teach that privately to adults. So we do 3 jobs between us.
So when the option primarily sheep, Andy, or cattle as well?
It's mainly sheep. I do cattle as well, but the bulk of the work is sheep. Very seasonal work, but it's enjoyable going out and meeting people.
Sure. It is. That's part of the job. I think the 3 of us would probably all say we enjoy it's going out and meeting people, isn't it? And that's definitely part of it. But going back, it was Andy, you published an article back in October with FCG called "It's Okay to Talk." So that's on the FCG website now. But you just sort of talking about where things were and it's okay for people to talk. So what drove you really to write the article and I guess start this discussion?
I think it's been coming for, or something I've been thinking about for a long time, but certainly over the last 6 months with the way agricultural markets have changed, we've had massive drop in milk prices, we've had inflation, we've got interest rates rises. The pressure on farmers has just been building and building, and we found I see a lot of regular clients on a monthly basis, and even those are starting to question whether they're in the right job, whether they're doing the right thing, and it's just the level of pressure is just building so much. And I think it came to a head mid-October when I got a phone call from a farmer, not a client, was looking for some advice, and it was very apparent on the phone call that advice wasn't something I could give in 2-3 weeks time. This was to him and the pressure he was under. It was pretty much a case of stop what I'm doing now. I needed to go and see him, and we just sat and talked probably for 2 or 3 hours around the table. He'd got a lot of TB issues. He was worried about money, quite a lot of money borrowed for investing in the farm, and it was just that pressure had really built up and just got to him. And I couldn't solve those problems, but he was able to talk to me. I knew what he was talking about. I understood what he was talking about, and just take some of that pressure off. And we'll probably talk a couple of times a week now just to run things through. And again, it's not answers, but it's just somebody you can pick the phone up to that understands where he's coming from, and I can offer advice if there's advice there, but it's really just somebody to listen.
I mean, yeah, I mean, when I sat down to think of something for it, the first thing I thought about is I guess it's the good old BT. It's good to talk, isn't it? And obviously other phone providers are available. But I mean, Lynda and Andy, when Andy and I were starting talking about this, I thought it'd be nice to involve somebody that's involved with a charity with mental health, particularly on agriculture, and obviously you've got the likes of FCN, but I know it was Andy's colleague Pippa suggested yourselves. What unfortunately has brought you into this aspect of agriculture?
Well, the story is that we're just as aware that all farmers are spinning a lot of plates, trying to keep them spinning, and unfortunately they can come crashing down. Our own circumstances, on the 1st of January 2022, a happy-go-lucky 22-year-old son took his life. And Lynda quite rightly said after that event, we've got to do something to stop other families going through the same heartache. And since then, we've been trying to promote positive mental health, which is not rocket science. It comes down to basic values of talking, listening, and being honest with each other. And unfortunately, you can't help anybody until they're honest with themselves and reach out so you can grasp that hand.
Right.
I think our initial impact and the shock was the number of youngsters that. Sorry.
No, that's fine.
As you can see, if you are touched by suicide, it lives with you for a long, long time. And we're just trying to get communities and families to open up conversations, keep them together, because everybody's got a value and they need to work through these ups and downs and bad days, so they're there when other members of the family need their help.
Yeah, and to be honest with you, Andy, you made a very, I think, impactful comment there where you need to be honest with yourself. And I know it's not something I hide, but it's not something I shout about. I've definitely suffered my own mental health issues in the past. And that's what it comes down to ultimately, is I had to be honest with myself that I needed help, that I needed to do something about it. I couldn't keep muddling along, for want of a better word, in the way I was going, thinking everything was okay. It wasn't, and I needed to do something about it. And like you say, the only way to you've got to be honest with yourself to say that, to then go and say, right, now I need help. Now I need to go and seek that help, or speak to someone, or whatever it is, whether it's a friend, whether it's a doctor, whether it's ringing someone like Andy happened to be, you know, because of on the farming side, worried about the business or whatever. It's still just reaching out, and you've got to be honest to do that. And that's the hardest thing. I remember looking at myself back then. That was the hardest thing to do, was actually going, I'm not right. No, it's somebody else I need to speak to.
But the beauty is conversations at the right time is the perfect intervention, and the hand being held out for people to start that conversation. And as families and communities, we need to be being honest with ourselves how we are, but looking round at neighbours and friends to see how they're coping. We were all brought up with the British stiff off her lip and grown men don't cry.
Yeah.
It's antiquated and we need to move on to more positive things.
Definitely. And definitely to me, I know Neil will be the same. At the end of the day, if what we're doing today just helps one person, then that's what matters.
Also very much like what Andy said about helping yourself. If you've helped yourself, then you become available to help other people. I think that definitely is, you know, you obviously want to help your family and anybody else that needs it, but if you can't help them, you know, then that if you're not being honest, it's very true.
Yeah, it's very true. Very true. So through Len's Lights, what activities or exposure have you given out there? Because I see a few of them myself on social media, etc., to help try and raise people's awareness and to create some of these conversations.
First, sorry, as I was trying to say when I stumbled before, initially our first thoughts were to reach out to the youngsters, really, so the young farmers, the graduates, the undergraduates, and to really get them to start thinking about being honest, as Andy said, being honest with themselves and being honest to each other and looking out for each other, and really getting them to talk. So that was our first stepping stone, really. And with the help of we support 3 charities, so we're not a charity ourselves as yet.
Right.
We'll see about that in the future, but we support 3 charities with our fundraising.
Yep.
So SCN, Papyrus, which is prevention of young suicide, and the Farm Safety Foundation, who've worked very closely with us, with the young farmers and within universities and colleges to get the message across to youngsters. So that was our starting point.
And I'm guessing that's where Pippa probably would have heard of you, because Andy, she's been at Harper, is that right?
Yeah.
Andy Dodd now, sorry, I'm asking that.
Yeah.
Getting confusing, all these Andys everywhere.
Very confusing. I would think so. But from that sort of initial start last year, and we did a lot of fundraising, and a lot of other people did a lot of fundraising on our behalf. The major event this year, which most people know about, was Andy's idea of doing a tractor run from Donegroats to Land's End.
Yeah, if we had done it in a straight line, it would have been 874 miles. But we wanted to zigzag through Scotland, England and Wales to reach as many communities as we could. And we ended up doing 2,239 miles. And what we wanted to do was, where we could, call in local livestock markets, because they play such an important role for a lot of people, possibly the only place they go and see other people in a week. The message we took across the country was no one in the rural community should feel isolated and alone. And we just want to pull families and communities together and predominantly keep them together.
You're right, markets is a good place. I mean, let's be honest, markets aren't even what they used to be in my lifetime. I mean, market day was a big thing, and you all went your Sunday best, and you know, everybody was there, and anybody and everybody was there. Whereas these days, let's be honest, a lot of people are just drop the calves or whatever it happens to be, or someone else. But you say they are an important part of the farming community, and they probably suffered a bit with COVID and various other things going on. You know, there isn't the local markets. Is it now there's no markets in Dorset, whereas of course there would have been a lot of markets in Dorset. You know, there isn't the markets that there used to be, but you're right, they are a good hub for the farming community. They still are, and you know, I mean, I've been to a few sales of clients over the last few years, and the people you see and run into, and that's what it should be. And as you say, how are you doing?
I suppose we've had a podcast about a show with Gilliman and Shaftesbury show,
yeah,
and that's another place which is
Yeah,
but quite an important part of all of our
for the agricultural community, the local show is an important part of the show, important part of the calendar to catch up with people.
Certainly,
definitely.
And see positivity and and nice animals and
everything else.
Yeah.
But yeah, so obviously that's the thing that most people will have seen will have been the tractor run, but obviously very successful by the sounds of it, and done very well.
Well, the beauty was it was the first tractor which had permission to go through the gates of Westminster.
Oh wow!
So it was where we're privileged, where doors or gates have been opened, and it's given us the opportunity to talk to different politicians and try and get the message out there that things aren't good in the rural community and differences need to make a difference. We had a conversation with Mark Spencer, Minister of Ag, only last week, saying we are concerned how farm inspections take place and would like to see it that there's a change that inspectors come on to farms and say, we can see you're getting most things right, but these are the suggestions where you can improve, not coming in heavy-handed and putting even more pressure on farmers who are already under pressure.
Oh, good point.
Definitely a very good point, because most people dread that inspection, or usually, what's the word I'm looking for? They put the pressure on themselves because they're expecting criticism or issues to come up, and more often than not, as you say, 99% of it is correct. It's that maybe that little 1%, and because of that they feel they failed on it, where they haven't. It can quite often be a case of literally, I don't know, not ticking a box, that's the wrong word, but it doesn't there's not much to rectify the problem, and that's as you say, it's people put that expectation on themselves, isn't it? And you say if farm inspectors can be a little bit more not even-handed, I don't know if that's the right word, but yeah, can do it in a more positive way, then that's got to be a benefit to everybody.
I prefer them all to be farmers.
Well, yes, there is that side of it. Yeah,
I can actually understand.
Yeah,
I think half the problem with that, Andrew, is the fact it's inconsistent in some cases as well. You do get farm inspectors that are very understanding and they work with the farm, and you'll get others that come in with quite an abrupt approach. And I think it's that's where the issue is. It's getting a bit more uniformity across the industry.
You're right, because I can think of an example of a farmer I was sort of helping look after them, and the farm staff didn't want to get involved with the inspection because of the way they were dealt with the previous year. So I dealt with it, and they're like, well, didn't they pick up on this or this? Or, that's what we got pulled over the barrel for last year. I said, didn't even mention it. Didn't even blink an eyelid at it. And they're like, oh. And then you've got but then in that instance, they had a roof that was full of cobwebs. And of course, they like them cobweb free. And the example of that one was the roof was going to come off in a week's time, but the inspector still wanted a picture of it cobweb free before they took the roof off, which seemed absolutely ludicrous. Let's just use some common sense.
Yeah.
The roof is coming off in a week. It will be sorted. Oh, no, it's got to be clean before you take the roof off. Oh, come on. Just use some common sense. That's what's needed on in this instance.
Yeah.
I mean, have you had any other feedback, Andy and Lynda, regarding, I don't know, ministerial or positive from the tractor run and other things you've done?
Yes, we've talked. We have fortunately been able to talk to a lot of people, and one of the first things we had said, it is still very much one of our main goals, is that we want to get mental health awareness and training as a compulsory part of the curriculum in all basic colleges. And and that's the main drum that we are beating, and we are talking to MPs about it, and letters have gone out, we know, and we are following it up again quite shortly with Mark Spencer. So we're not letting that one go.
I think that's a wonderful idea.
Well, I think, you know, I mean, the Farm Safety Foundation, or Yellow Wellies, do a tremendous job at the moment, and the training and awareness that they deliver across a lot of universities is tremendous, and we've sat in on it. And they did do a video of us, which is they use within that regarding the mental health issue. But it's very much it's a case of who asks them to go and which courses actually have access to it, and we're saying this should be compulsory, and we're talking about it as well. So
we feel very honoured because we were contacted a few weeks ago by the 4th year students at Harper Adams, inviting us to go and do a presentation on behalf or for all students, but what the 4th years wanted it was predominantly aimed for the 1st years to just raise awareness of mental health. And
so they were thinking of the ones coming through below them.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
It was a tremendous day.
Yeah. We put on various games and events, but with mental health stamps, just to raise ideas and awareness, really.
Yeah.
And we also had invited some charities along as well, and various organisations, not there to rattle a bucket and raise funds, but just to be there so that students could go and talk to them if they wanted to, or pick up literature, which we were told from the student services a lot did, so it made them more aware of who they could go to.
Yeah,
and that's sometimes what it is making people aware of who to talk to sometimes. You know, the easy one is talk to your mate, but sometimes it's not easy talking to your mate. It's easier to talk to somebody that you feel won't judge you because they don't know you, they don't know who you are, what your story is, whereas you feel a mate might judge you a little bit.
Or professional, to be fair.
Well, yeah. So I mean, and exactly. So it's knowing who you can reach out to and talk to.
Yeah, knowing all those options, really.
But this is why it's so important. Individuals, wherever they're coming from, who are going down a farm drive, to be aware of what is happening on a farm. And basically, if you're the first person down that farm drive, you're the eyes and ears who might potentially spot something doesn't feel at ease or doesn't feel right. And usually your gut instinct is 99 times right.
You're right. I mean, sorry, Linda, go on.
We've been amazed during the tractor run and since the tractor run, because we're prepared to talk about it. A lot of people come to us to talk about it, and it's just making yourself know that you're not just there to TB test or ultrasound, or you're a food vet. Actually, just be more open to what they might just need to talk about at that moment.
Exactly. I mean, I remember when I first jumped this side of the fence, I suppose, was that 12 years ago or whatever, someone kept saying, you might be the only person they see that day or that week, you know, go down that farm and smile, which I'm not renowned for my smiling, but go down that drive and smile, because you might be the only person they see. And let's be honest, I remember being on farm. You always used to love it when the AI man turned up, and you could have a gossip and what's going on and who's doing what. You know, that was almost the highlight of the day. It was somebody off the couple of people on farm. It was the highlight of the day to see somebody different. So it is, as you say, it's us as professionals going on farm. We need to be available as well. If someone wants to talk, we can have those conversations.
I've got a comment, and it's start a conversation today, because you never know where it will lead, and it might just save a life.
Yeah. Yep. Definitely.
It's quite easy as consultants or other people out and about just to pick the phone up. I do it a lot with clients if I've not spoken to them for a couple of weeks. Just pick this phone up, say hello. I don't need anything, but it's like you said, Andrew. Just it's gauging how those people are, and you can pick things up in the background, and they can just talk it through, even though they weren't necessarily intending to. But you get in early, you can pick things up and deal with it before it gets out of hand and there's an issue.
It's very true, because even if you're just out there, even if you haven't spoken about anything specific, just that phone call sort of made somebody aware that you're thinking of them, which has a huge influence on the way you think.
So, sometimes that is all you need. Is just someone's rung me, someone's thought about me.
Somebody's there.
Yeah, definitely.
We saw it a lot during COVID when everybody was so isolated. My work output was pathetic because I spent most of the time on the phone just talking to people. But if that's what it needed, then it to my mind, that was time well spent. Might not have been doing anything particularly constructive, but just talking to people.
I got to say, I found that probably during COVID is you ended up spending longer on the phone.
You did,
because it was people were welcoming that chance to talk to somebody other than those immediately around them at home, sort of thing. And while I know I had one or two farms where they didn't really notice a difference apart from no reps coming up the drive, because they still had to go and milk their cows. It was only when they went into town to do the shopping themselves or something did they notice. It was still, they didn't see people or they couldn't socialize. And so, I mean, I know who I was working for at the time, we tried to set up a monthly Zoom meeting for the clients just so they could have a socialize. It didn't turn into one. It ended up becoming a business meeting, but the original idea was just to get people online to at least try and see a different face and have a conversation. But I guess it's not the same, is it, when you've got multiple people on a Zoom meeting having sort of that conversation? It doesn't work the same. But that was our initial intent, was to just try and give people the opportunity then to talk to somebody.
Even this podcast was never meant to sort of do anything but just people sitting around a table chatting, more than it was sort of selling anything or achieving anything.
It's never been about that. It's been about just
community.
Having hoping people will learn and gain
at the same time.
Exactly. But I mean, from Len's Lights, what are the next steps for you guys moving forward?
Just what the message we're trying to get out there. Talking about mental health doesn't have to be a negative subject. It can be a positive subject, and you can take it in a progressive, forward way if you open up conversations and listen to people. The beauty of listening to people is the art of doing it, really, because it should be a conversation should be two parts, talking and listening, but often it's talking and waiting to talk. And it's so important to let someone have a conversation, let them finish that conversation and pick up what they're trying to say.
Yeah, and for me in particular, one of the things that's been brilliant, particularly since we finished the tractor run, the number of people who've been in touch with us and said, we want to do some fundraising, we want to do this, there was a tractor pull, there's been some speed cheering, there's been a ploughing match, and there's lots of other things which people independently and quite widespread around the country who are raising money for us. So it just shows that our message is getting out there because people are aware of us, really.
And the beauty of that, if they're doing something, it's pulling that community within that area together, which is so important. What I found hard after the loss of my son was being on the farm, because there was no one to talk to. If it was a day when I was going scanning, I was actually out on the road talking to people, and those days are much easier. And it makes you, or it showcases how hard it is when you're stuck in a field or milking cows on your own. You've got too much time to think, and that's what makes life hard.
It is, you know, while there's a part of me when I was still relief milking enjoyed the peace sometimes, just me and the cows. You say there are other times it's just me and the cows, and yeah, the mind goes wandering too far, too much, and you overthink things and start worrying about things that you don't need to worry about. But as you say, because there aren't other conversations or other distractions, that's what happens.
The regarding Len's light and the tractor relay, the word that came out on our journey, and it kept being emphasised, was the word respect. Everybody wanted to feel that they were respected, or respect needed to be shown, and that word respect has stuck in my mind. And I just feel the way or the pressure which is on the farming community at the moment, we all need respect, and a bit of pressure took off, really.
Yeah, it's very true. As we said, sort of the respect comes from people thinking about you and being there. So yeah, for us it's easy enough. We go up and down farm drives every day. So
yeah. Sorry, I'm not usually lost for words. It's a poignant message, and yeah, you know, you've suffered a loss that I don't know how you say anything to that, really. I mean, you know, I've had my troubles, but I'm still here, and you know, it's not easy, and really that's what we want out of this today, is if it just helps that one person, then that's what matters, and hopefully helps people have that conversation to, you know, maybe you ring up the neighbour and see how you're going, or bump into him, or whatever it happens to be. Do it, because I mean, I guess like as Andy's article when he started this the idea for this podcast, you know, TB, interest rates, milk price, it's all there, they're all spinning, and for some people they might decide it's too hard, but to go out there and try and have that conversation with somebody, and try and maybe get some advice, or seek some help, or whatever needs to be done.
Basically,
I think the one thing.
Sorry, go.
There we are.
Basically, what I'd like to say, it doesn't matter who anybody talks to or who they feel they want to talk to, as long as they talk.
Yeah.
I think don't get too tied up in social media as well. That can be quite divisive at times. You can go on Facebook and Twitter and everything else that's out there, and if you're not in the right mindset and you're struggling, actually things that probably aren't actually there, but it can really draw you down. I have no issue with coming off social media for however long it takes. Just take a break. Come off. You don't need to be seeing what's going on, who's going where on holiday, or all the rest of it. It's actually spend some time, family and people around you is important.
Exactly.
Speak to them.
Yeah, exactly. It's come home to me, because I've not been on social media until we started this journey, and I needed to start learning how to use Facebook before the tractor run, and it's literally that new to me. But in seeing, surprises me what I do see on social media, and even quite locally, I see people who you think they're living the best life ever. If you get to talk to those people, they often, and the impression, and particularly for youngsters, the pressure that puts on them, it's really quite scary, very scary. But I'd like to think a lot of the youngsters, certainly a lot that we've met, are aware of that and can moderate it. But equally, there'll be an awful lot who can't and believe it all to be absolutely true. And why aren't I living that life? And it's a very, very dangerous world.
absolutely.
It is. It's a very good point from both of you, definitely, because you say if you're in the wrong frame of mind, it will make things worse, not better. And social media has its advantages. I know myself. I still use it just to keep in contact with friends from my time in Australia, just to see what they're doing and how things are going. But as you say, if you've got somebody seemingly living the life of Riley, then it can affect you. Even though, as you point out, Linda, more often than not, they're not. It's they're giving the impression that reality is a completely different thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'd like to ask the question: who should we be tomorrow? And the answer to that is the same person we are today, just a little bit stronger and a little bit more robust. And that's all I can hope for everybody else, really. Just be your own personality, but just become a little bit stronger, a little bit more robust, so you are there to offer support and help to the people around you.
Yeah.
I think following on from that slightly, one of the things that you also need to recognise is, and Andrew's very rightly focusing on positive mental health. It's the same as physical health. We all have our ups and our downs, and it's forever changing. You're not going to be happy and feeling your best all the time. You've just got to recognise where you are, recognise the dips, but recognise what actually lifts you in a day, and just keep on top of it, and some focus on that. You won't always feel dreadful. There's little things you can do to make yourself feel better. Just recognise that, it's normal to have ups and downs.
Sure, of course. We were just discussing it.
Yeah, we were discussing that before we came on, because I've got to say that's probably been the biggest part of my journey is, as you say, recognising those ups and downs. And yeah, I still have the odd day, but I know it's only a day. So if I've got to go watch a film, if I'm allowed, and there's no kids in the house, but watch a film for a couple of hours just to get mind switch off from it, then that's what I've got to do. When I look at, for me, I don't know, 10 years ago, there would have been times where I probably wouldn't have moved for a week or whatever. So as you say, it's recognising the signs and developing your own coping mechanisms, because everybody's different, whether it's get up and go for a walk, whether it's play with the kids, whether it's, because they mean so much, whether it's watch a film or whatever it happens to be. Just find something that you enjoy just to help you refocus, and go again tomorrow, because usually the next day you're up and you're away again.
Yeah, it's just in yourself, that bit of time for yourself.
It is. It's yourself.
Yeah.
It's knowing what's important to you as well. I think it's remembering you can get very tied up in work, and be that farm, be that what we do, or anybody really. You can get very tied up in what there is, and you can forget the important things around you. I'm actually sat in Malvern Showground at the moment. My daughter's doing a week-long driving course. She's only 16, so not started to drive yet. It's been brilliant. I've been sat in a car with her from 9 o'clock in the morning till 4:30 at night. I've only shaken a few times. I've not pulled the handbrake. But it's been brilliant, and we've both enjoyed it so much. Just having that confined space and time together has been brilliant. I can't be on my phone. I can't do anything else because I'm worried about the car and worried about her, obviously, as well, and my own life. But it just takes you out of it, and it's just something different. It's been brilliant.
Yeah, absolutely. I've been doing sort of going out backwards and forwards onto farms and off farms for like over 30 years. And the one thing I always found worked is very similar to what everybody's saying. But I used to identify, let's say, 2 specific farmers. It's usually about 2 farmers who are actually almost more my friends than they would be clients. And whenever I was feeling demotivated or lonely or sad, those are the guys I'd go to. And even if we didn't discuss anything, we would lift each other up. And by the time you were finished, so whenever I needed to phone them or go there, it was absolutely brilliant. And it's worked wonders for me when I needed it.
Well, I mean, I guess I hate to admit, I use that trick occasionally. You know, you've got to phone somebody, but you don't feel like phoning that particular person.
Yeah.
Do you go and phone somebody else who you know will just,
your mate.
yeah, whether it's you or Andy, or it might be a farmer or whatever, you just ring that person, you know, it's like a little bit of an easy call just to get you going, and then you
but
pick
the next
up
call
and away
is
you go.
easy.
Yeah,
That's right.
Exactly.
I've done that all my career.
Yeah,
it certainly has. I've had to do that. It's because we're in our jobs as well. There's a lot of loneliness and there's a lot of alone time. We spend, well, especially when I was in South Africa, we'd spend hours in a car and you'd be completely on your own. And eventually, sure, hand-free telephones came in and changed the way that we thought that you could phone people. But otherwise, you'd sit in the car for hours with no communications. It can get lonely. So
I've got to admit, actually, when I started the business on my own 18 months ago, that was the biggest shock for me. I've been used to literally in the car, on the phone constantly when I was in the car, talking, phoning people up or catching up with people or whatever it happened to be. And all of a sudden, my car was quiet. I didn't know what to do with myself because, like you say, sometimes you can be in that car for a couple of hours before you go somewhere. So, and as you say, that's time alone, and you overthink sometimes.
That's right. So it's like Andy was saying about being on a farm. It's very, very similar, just different sort of like surrounding. Yeah. Well, anything else you got to say, Andy, from your point of view when you're working with farmers?
I think we've pretty much covered it. I think that the main thing is that people just need to realise there are people out there. People aren't on their own.
Exactly.
Pick up the phone, talk to somebody coming up the drive, and I'll always do the same. They can expect a call. If I've not spoken to them in a while, I will be picking the phone up. They might not want to speak to me, but I'll just say hello. If it's not a problem, then crack on.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I agree with you.
Yeah, I can probably think of one or two that don't want to talk to you, Andy.
Thanks, Andrew.
Oh dear. And what about you, Linda and Andy? Any thoughts? Looking at it's probably time we start wrapping this up a little bit. But any more from yourself?
One of the things we did in the first year, and again with the help very much of initially Harper Adams and then picked up by Yellow Wellies, we produced a 5-a-day challenge card, which is basically something for, it's the size of a credit card. I don't even know if I hold it up. No, don't know.
We got it. Yeah.
Size of a credit card. It's plastic credit card, and so it can go in anybody's wallet, anybody's purse, and it's basically on the first side. It's just got 5 points. Be honest with yourself and those around you. Talk openly about daily challenges and listen. Care for yourself as well as you care for others. Contact that person you've been saying you should, and plan for the unexpected, make the right choices. On the reverse of it, there's the helpline. So we've got Papyrus, FCN and Yellow Wellies and the Samaritans numbers.
Excellent.
About 20,000 of these have gone out so far.
Wow.
Is there anywhere people can get them if they want to get hold of one?
Well, we have we have them. I mean, at the moment we've been distributing them through Young Farmers Clubs. So I wrote to all the secretaries. So quite a few of those have been picked up. They've also gone out to quite a few livestock markets, and we've got a holdalls with those. And but yes, actually, just recently, in the last couple of weeks, we've been nominated for a charity to be one of the charities of the year for our local secondary school. They've gone into the secondary school as well. But yeah, I mean, if people, can be in touch with me for sure.
Yeah. As I say, look out for them at your Young Farmers or your local livestock market.
At least we know how to promote them if we know Young Farmers would be able to get hold of them. So.
Definitely.
Yeah, exactly. So there's a lot of out through the Young Farmer organisations.
I know a few of them that I know were involved with that ploughing down in Cornwall, and that really did sound interesting. So also fundraising. So
I was aware there was 5 a day for physical health and fruit and veg, and I thought, why couldn't there be 5 a day for mental health?
Yeah.
That's where the concept came up from, really.
Right.
I just tried to do 5 simple points that basically could just make people think about how they were on a set day and how the people around them are coping.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's as you say, it's a good idea. 5 a day, physically, as in 5 fruit or veg a day. Trying to convince my kids of that sometimes is a frustration.
And myself.
But why not 5 a day mentally as well?
Yeah.
No, it's a good idea. It's a good idea. But on that, I think it's probably time we draw this to a close. Yeah. So I'd like to thank Andy Dodd for his article initially that's made us think about this podcast and get it out there. And I'd also like to thank Lynda and Andy for joining us and talking a little bit about Len's Light and what you've been doing in the last year, 18 months, to raise awareness of mental health within the agricultural community. So I'd certainly like to thank you both very much for that. And Neil, any thoughts from yourself?
No, thanks everybody for attending. And yeah, well, we certainly would always be there to help and support. So it's great that we've met you. So Andy, we've probably known for a lot longer. So it's been great. Thanks, guys.
But yeah, no. So on that note, thank you everybody for listening.
Yep.
We are now on Instagram. If anybody really wants to follow us on Instagram as well as other social media, I forgot to say, yeah, if you'd like any to discuss any of this further, I'm sure any of us are open to it. I know Len's Light are on Facebook because that's how I initially made contact with you, Lynda. And as you say, you've got the FCN and the other charities, Samaritans, whatever, or talk to a mate, talk to a doctor, whoever you feel comfortable with. And I know you've got to find the person that you feel comfortable with to be able to share. Right. So on that, I'd like to say thank you and a goodbye to everybody.
Goodbye from me.
Goodbye.
Yeah. Cheers, guys.
Thanks.
And now for the really boring bit, I'm afraid, the legal disclaimer. The information provided during this podcast has been prepared for general information purposes only and does not constitute advice. The information must not be relied upon for any purpose and no representation or warranty is given to its accuracy, completeness or otherwise. Any reference to other organisations, businesses or products during the podcast are not endorsements or recommendations of ChewintheCud Limited. The views of Andrew Jones are personal and may not be the views of ChewintheCud Limited, and the views of Neil Greggor are personal and may not be the views of Viking Genetics and any affiliated companies. For more information on the podcast, articles and details of services offered by ChewintheCud Limited, visit www.chewinthecud.com. Thank you and goodbye.